Good afternoon, Teach for India. Namaskar. Thank you for having us. As our very competent moderator suggested, if you are a participant, if you would turn off your microphones and if you would turn off your videos, our bandwidth would be able to handle it a lot better. On behalf of my two colleagues, Mario Fishery, the great Mario Fishery, and Alexander Jhonson, the brilliant Alex Jhonson, it is our pleasure to represent the American School of Bombay in our partnership with you as an organization. So the story of how we came here to be is a long story. The short version is, I was scheduled to work with Teach for India on 21st century skills within the classroom. And then coronavirus came and changed everything for everyone. And now we're saying, okay, 21st century skills are still as important, if not more important than they ever were. How do we deal with them, and how do we create applications and learning environments in the virtual world that we can get to these? So that's how my colleagues and I will be spending our day today. As Elizabeth said, if you have any questions, put them in the chat group. Both Elizabeth will be taking a look at those questions, and Mario will be taking a look at those questions as well. Every once in a while, after a certain number of slides, we will pause and take a few of those questions. It's important that we curate them so we can maybe get the higher level questions, and then we can always get to some of the other questions afterwards. So please jump in the chat and begin to write your questions down. I want to begin by setting a metaphor for all of us to think about. I think sometimes storytelling and metaphor creation allows us to better deal with complex issues. The metaphor that I would like to share with you today is of a tunnel with light at the end. So let's think for a moment that before coronavirus, especially in the ecosystem of Teach for India, every educational interaction was taking place physically. There was a physical space, there were teachers, there were adults, there were students, there were parents, and now we have had to move the ecosystem of Teach for India into a virtual space. I can only imagine the obstacles, the challenges that your system must have been hit with. So think about it for a moment that you and your children, your school are in this tunnel. We know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We know that. The question is, how far away is the end of the tunnel? And how do we get out of the tunnel as effectively, as safely, as educationally prepared as possible? Our contention, my colleagues and our contention is, the more we can focus on 21st century skills, the more we can focus on the social and emotional and ethical learning of our children during this tunnel of virtual learning, during this tunnel of coronavirus, the closer the light will come and the sooner we can get out. Our contention is that integrating the 21st century skills into the virtual learning will allow us to not only see the light, but we'll begin to see the turn, and very soon the beauty awaits us. By the way, no one can say coronavirus is going to end and we're going to go back to the old normal. Teach for India, Teach for India's classrooms, Teach for India's philosophy, Teach for India's strategy, Teach for India's pedagogy, the relationships Teach for India has as a community are forever changed. And that is true with every organization, every sector of business, and definitely every school. We are coming out of this tunnel into a new reality, into a new normal. It is our responsibility that the new normal is a better normal for our students, a better normal for our community than we were before coronavirus. So that's the metaphor that we're going to be playing with today, is the tunnel and light at the end of the tunnel. The structure of our webinar is going to go as follows. I am going to set context. I am going to ground us in 21st century skills, virtual learning, new normal, coronavirus world. We're then going to step back and we're going to take a look at and align on the definitions of what we are saying when we say 21st century. I think it's important for us to, even though we're going to use Teach for India's 21st Century 8 C's, I think it's important that we actually verbally articulate what it is we're talking about. I will then set us into the virtual learning space a little bit. And then Mario and Alex and I are going to introduce you to a plethora of resources, a deep well of resources with brief assessments of each of them. Literally, I have been watching Alex and Mario do 45-minute professional developments on each of these resources. I have been attending them. So as we are upscaling our own faculty and our parents and our students on these, every one of the, I think, 20 that we're going to share with you today is a 45-minute to an hour professional growth opportunity. We are going to show you all 20. And we're going to talk briefly about them, and then you're going to go off and you're going to study them, and maybe we can come back and do a deep dive into a few of them. And the questions and answers are going to be all the time. So that's the structure of the webinar today. I think that part of the context that I would like to share with you, there's a famous American comedian, George Lopez, that I think he said this years ago. When things get bad, that's the best time to reinvent yourself. Well, in education and in many sectors, things have never been as bad through a certain lens. So therefore, there's never been a better time for us to reinvent. I know that I have been working with Teach for India for 10 years. I've been working with Teach for America and the Teach for 30 years. And I know you are always on the cutting edge of reinventing the education that you are providing to your sector. But we also know that education is one of the slowest sectors globally to be innovative, because we have this market that just sits there. Kids have to go to school. Governments have to provide schools. Therefore, we don't have to reinvent ourselves. We don't have to be innovative. Boom, coronavirus shows up. We are forced to reinvent ourselves. So this is a great time to do it. And as David Zuki says, we must reinvent the future free of blinders, so we can really choose options. I think the blinders that we all had on a month ago was virtual school is going to last for 1 month. We'll all be back to school by May 15th. Modi ji is going to give a speech to India, and then all of a sudden the vaccine is going to be there. No, take all those blinders off. And I think it is best for us to say, let's assume for a moment that we are stuck in the virtual world for 18 months. Boom. Just start with the what if statement. What if we are stuck in virtual learning for the next year and a half? Because if we say we're stuck in this for a month, we have blinders on. Take them off. Cambridge University in the UK today announced they are going to be in the virtual world until August 2021. That's it. Cambridge said it. They basically said, we're not even going to try and come back in August. We're not even going to try and come back in January. We're going to come back next year, 21, 22. So they've had to really open up their blinders. I would love for us all to return in August 2020. But if we think we're there, and if we're trying to reinvent ourselves only to get through June and July, we are going to have failed our students and our faculty. One of my favorite research articles I share with my team, with my parents, with my board is, we as human beings get our minds made up, and we actually don't change our mind regardless of the facts. We are one of the only species on the planet that don't change our mind because of science or because of facts. A plant is growing in this direction. If the sunlight is no longer there, it will turn to the sunlight. Human beings are going in this direction. If the metaphorical sunlight's here, we still keep going in this direction. This is based on a Stanford research from 1975 that is conclusive that human beings, it's very difficult to change our minds even when we are presented with facts. What is the fact, and what am I trying to change minds here is the same thing you are. And this is the big one. Our entire community of parents, in fact, most of our community of teachers in the world, let alone India, let alone Teach for India, have decided content is more important than skills. And this is a falsehood. in 2020, there is no evidence to suggest that content and spending time on content is more important and trumps 21st century skill development, dispositions, and social and emotional learning. The jury is out. This discussion is over, but we're still growing in the direction where there's no sunlight, because our parents in our schools and our teachers find safety in content. Math teachers feel the meaning of their life is to be able to teach the quadratic equation. That is what they have spent 8 years in college on, math. Now they know that I am the holder of knowledge. I am the holder of content. This is where facts alone are not going to change the mind. It is the way we interpret the fact. It is the way that we engage in parents and educate parents about the facts. Just throwing the facts, saying skills, right now, I just read something today, 76% of the workforce, the people who are hiring for the workforce, say soft skills are more important than hard skills. That's a fact. But if we just keep throwing that at our parents, they're not going to buy it. We have to be able to illustrate, to analyze, to engage with. And I think that is becoming even more so in the virtual world. So why 21st century skills? I want to share a few things with you. What are 21st century skills? This article here, the summation of this article is 21st century skills are important because it allows us to navigate an ever-shifting workplace. Wrong. Craig is telling you wrong. So I didn't show you where this article came from because I don't want them to say I'm slandering them, but I'm telling you they're wrong. The second piece of research I looked at is what they're telling us is 21st century skills prepare students for unknown futures and unknown future jobs. Wrong. That is not it. If this is why you're here, if this is what Teach for India is trying to do, is to teach kids 21st century skills for a future they do not know or a job that they will have 10 years from now, wrong. What are 21st century skills? Why are they important? This writer says to succeed in their careers. Wrong. The fourth one that I looked up, empowering our students. Here, the summation is to prepare children for success in school, in work, and in life. Check. Correct. Yes. The big why of 21st century skills is not for the future. It is for the today. To learn calculus in high school is actually for the future. Calculus in high school, is for someone to become an engineer. But 21st century skills and social and emotional development is for the now, and it is for the perpetual. It is not for, there is no end game on this. So this is how important it is. And I would contend, this is Craig's opinion, so you can take a picture if you want and send to the Times of India, and they'll know it's just Craig's opinion. I'm telling you two things. Number one is that it is more important to work on skills and dispositions in virtual learning. It's more important because of number two. And number two is it's easier to work on content. In the virtual world, it lends itself to content. It lends itself to grammar. It lends itself to chemistry. It lends itself to reading and writing. It lends itself to learning the periodic table. Virtual learning for content is easy. It is the virtual learning on skills that is very difficult. Not only difficult to model, not only difficult to assess, but difficult to create engagements. So that is where Alex and Mario and I today are going to show you some resources that inherently, by using them to deliver content, you are actually modeling, instructing, and can assess 21st century skills. Bang. If you can do that, you win. So I want to share, I snipped this off of my computer this morning. I typed in trends in virtual and online learning. And I got, click a couple of these, keep going, 339 million hits. I got 339 million hits. But this was on February 13th. So on February 13th, before coronavirus really ravaged the world, this is February 13th, it's kind of still in China. If you typed in trends in virtual and online learning, you get 339 million hits. However, if you, today I typed in trends in education due to corona. So not even trends in education, just trends in education due to coronavirus. I got 823 million. So there are more hits with corona tied to it than before corona in education. This is very significant. So what are these trends? Am I going to work with you on all 800 million? No. I am actually going to share 4 trends that are, by the way, what is a trend? A trend is something where 1 or 2 people start working on something, it becomes kind of successful, it becomes a little bit more popular, so 6 or 7 different schools start doing it, and then 2 years later they do a presentation, they write a book about it, then 20 schools do it. Whoa, coronavirus, trends are trending within the day. If the schools in China are finding a way to get kindergarten kids back into the classroom in a safe environment, boom, 3,000 schools are gonna try it. Coronavirus has put trending on an exponential track, and crisis has pushed us to opportunity. I'm going to share 4 with you that I think are relevant to TFI, relevant to your population, relevant to India, and relevant to the next 18 months. Trend number 1, examinations and gradings are forever going to change. Hallelujah. Every experience I've ever had with Teach for India or any of the organizations that are working with large Indian educational populations is the examinations and the grading is the tail that wags our dog. Every innovation, every time we deep dive into relevance in education, we have to come back out to prepare kids to take the examination, to get the grade so that they can move to the next space. Virtual learning has changed this forever. It has shown us that the examination and the grading are not what is important. It has proven to us that the amount of time that we have spent on these is wrong. And I'll talk more about this. So this is trending, and we need to make sure that this gets momentum and keeps going. Dear TFI, do not let this trend die. Even if we go back to bricks and mortar, we need to push this as far as we can. That's trend number 1. Trend number 2, blended learning can ensure personalized education. Much of what we are doing is we are thinking as teachers, here's the content, here's the lesson plan for the week, and we're putting it out there synchronously or asynchronously in a virtual world. And within the first day, half our kids are done with it. By the 5th day, 25% of our kids are still struggling with it. It has forced us to realize one size does not fit all. So now what are you going to do? What about that kid that finished the entire the entire week's plan in 1 day? Is that person just going to sit for 4 days and do nothing? Or are you going to have to scaffold? Are you going to have to personalize? Are you going to have to go deeper? Virtual has shown this in our face. I have been to your classrooms all over India. You have 200 kids sitting there, and you have so limited resources that you're basically teaching to 4 or 5 different scaffolds. Virtual learning has not only told us we have to, it allows us. Some of the resources we're going to share with you today make personalized learning so easy. And it is going to be a gift to you. It is going to take the burden of personalized learning off your shoulders. So again, when we go back, the trend is going to be go back, but use blended learning and virtual space to personalize the education at a very low, if a zero, monetization or price point. The third trend is teaching versus learning has to be figured. In the old world, if the teacher was in the classroom and kids were in the classroom, we thought learning was taking place. In the asynchronous world, one teacher can prepare the best kindergarten lesson that is a virtual 1-hour engagement. And that one teacher can provide that learning to 7 billion children. This has put our business model, and Teach for India should be jumping up and down about this. Teach for India's model is based on fundraising. if we now can rethink our business model to say, how does the virtual space significantly decrease our dependency on funding, then the funding we get can go into so many other things. Virtual learning right now, there are several schools in India that are coming together. Right now, I'm actually brokering this organization that's saying, if we have to stay in virtual space, who are your 7 best elementary school teachers? Who are your best science teachers? Who are your best language arts teachers? Let's put all of our best together to produce the best virtual learning content and experiences, and all of our organizations use it. Why not? Alex and Mario are going to be talking a little bit later about all of the ASB resources that we have now pushed out to the CBSE world, out to the SSC world, out to Teach for India, out into Akanksha. Why should ASB's resources that we are using not be accessible to the world? If ever, this is our chance. Teaching versus learning. Teacher, the masses. So we'll have to figure this out. And the 4th trend that the virtual world has thrust upon us, and this again, I was recently at and I don't know if I shared this with Shaheen, I left the last TFI board meeting so impressed that the entire board meeting had been about non-academic stuff. The idea of classrooms and of teaching and of assessment didn't even come up in the 3-hour-long board meeting. The only thing the Teach for India board engaged with the leadership team for Teach for India was the social, the emotional, the ethical well-being of our parents, of our students, and of our teachers. That was the level of board conversation that the Teach for India board was having. Because we know this social distancing means emotional distancing. We are going to have a community coming out of this tunnel that have actually socialized themselves to be distant. They have actually emotionalized themselves to be distant. I am recently a grandfather. My 2 grandchildren are being born in the virtual world. My interactions with my grandchildren in different countries for the next 1.5 years are going to actually be virtual. How can we as schools make sure social distancing doesn't mean socially distant? These are the 4 trends that I think you as an educational organization are charged to respond to. So let's pause here and let's see if we can take a couple questions from either Elizabeth or Mario, if you're looking at the questions, about what I have spoken about. If there are questions on the chat that are not directly related to what I've already spoken to, let's wait because the next parts of the webinar might address those.
Currently, there are very few questions, but then I think most of them are related to the next part, like what are the skills, what is the significant way of development of 21st century skills?
Fantastic.
What are the skills that they should focus on?
Okay, so let's wait and we can come back to that. Okay, let's keep going then. Next slide.
I do think there are some questions. People want a clear definition of blended learning. Seems to be some ambiguity in the chat around what blended learning is. So if you could just shed a little bit of light on your definition of blended learning for everyone before we move on.
Yeah, actually I'm going to hold on that and I'm going to ask Alex to Google the best definition so that we actually take a look at a research definition, because this is a very good question. Much like flipped classroom, much like blended learning, much like a hybrid program, let's be clear on what we're talking about, because I don't want to throw ASB's definition of blended learning out there to Teach for India. So while Alex is looking that up, is there any other question on what we've covered before we go forward?
Craig, there was one specific question about why is it called 21st century skills, and because it's been there for a very long time. So why is it called 21st century skills?
So yes, the 21st century skills it makes no sense. When we take a look at, for instance, Teach for India's 8 C's, all of these C's have been around since Socrates sat beneath a tree and educated his pupils. I just know that whoever started this 20, 30 years ago, it kind of stuck. At the American School of Bombay right now, we actually don't talk about 21st century skills. We talk about the skills that the American School of Bombay is integrating into the curriculum. It's one of those things that even though Xerox doesn't mean photocopy, we still use the word Xerox to do photocopies. So it's a silly title, but I think we all kind of know what we're talking about. Alex, do you have a definition for blended learning yet?
I put it in the chat. I just shared it. Just so that people understand, when we're talking about everything we're doing right now virtually, we know that that's not a replacement for the physical. So blended learning essentially is trying to bring about the best of both worlds. As you heard Craig mention about personalization, it's far easier to personalize in many ways by using online and digital resources that are tailored to that student. So combining all of that and the advantages of the virtual with the advantages of the physical interaction and the social interactions you can get from a physical classroom.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, let's move along. So getting into the fostering of the 21st century skills. This is why we're all here. I want to set a context. Actually, skip, Alex, let's go to the next slide. Oh, yes, sorry. So we're going to begin with the quiz. And the quiz is, these are the 4 skills of your 8 that we're going to talk about today. So once Alex and Mario and I chose these, we did the research on, there's actually a research-based sequence. If you're going to choose which of these skills to address first, second, third, and fourth, they come in order. So why don't you take a minute? We have 813 people here. We're obviously not going to ask all of you. Take a minute and think, which of these, if you're going to address them, do you think should come first? What comes second? What comes third? And what comes fourth? I'll give you about 15 seconds to think to yourself, and then I'll share. Ten seconds. Mario and Alex, don't share the answers. Five seconds before I give you the right answer, because there's a right answer. It's coming from MIT and Stanford. Okay, here we go. So the minute I threw MIT and Stanford out there, you all automatically agreed that whatever the answer is Craig gives, it's going to be the right answer because MIT and Stanford said it, correct? Secondly, there is no right answer. But each one of us just answered this question. Each one of us looked at these 4, we thought about the way they interact with each other, the way they are connected to each other, and in our heads, we saw collaboration comes first, consciousness will come last, after we're creative, after we've communicated. Somebody else is like, consciousness has to come first because it's self-realization, then you communicate out in a collaborative way towards creativity. You can play these any way you want. The purpose of this quiz is not to be facetious. The purpose of this quiz is to get the 811 of you to actually think about what these are before we get into them. So I was hoping that this quiz would get you to think about, what do we mean by collaboration? This is the alignment on definition. Teach for India does a phenomenal job with their visual collaboratives. The way that you all create visuals, your website, your dashboards, it's phenomenal. So several years ago, Teach for India said, what are our 8 C's? And you all came together on collaboration, on communication, on creativity, on consciousness. Then you all said, what are 3 to 4 of the subpoints below each of these that would allow us to know what we're talking about? So your definitions are there. My question to you is, how often do you revisit these? How often do you actually say, what did we mean when we said collaboration? Because the verb to mobilize is a very powerful verb, and it's the very first subpoint underneath TFI's collaboration. TFI is saying, if you're going to collaborate, it means mobilize. There's nothing passive about TFI's collaboration. It is incredibly active. There is momentum there, all right? And it is not mobilized in a dysfunctional way. It is not the masses running towards. It is embracing diversity and encouraging inclusivity. Where does that come into collaboration? I can think of 12 different things that corporate people would put under collaboration before they talked about embracing diversity and encouraging inclusivity. So again, you as an educator at TFI have been charged to model, to educate, to assess, and then to give feedback on collaboration. This is your job. You have been hired to do this. So you might want to make sure that it's talking about mobilization, teamwork, diversity, and inclusivity. That is the alignment around the definition. So creativity at TFI, they've chosen 3 things. I remember the day we chose these. I was in the room when we were putting little stickies and trying to decide what the subpoints of this will be. TFI has said if we're only going to say creativity has to do 3 things, one of those 3 is change. Again, I would contend out of 100 organizations, if you ask them to come up with 5 to 7 descriptors of creativity, change is not going to be there. But of course, change in TFI is your entire vision is change. So creativity towards what? Towards positive change. Communication. Again, you are saying communication is not speaking. Communication is not listening. Communication is not nonsense. It is articulate, it is active, and it advocates. So again, TFI has stepped up to the plate, clearly mission and vision driven, and it said creativity changes, communication advocates. You advocate for change, you advocate for ethics, you advocate for morality, you advocate for the masses, you advocate for the children. Consciousness. Consciousness is not Om Shanti, lotus pose, sitting under the tree at TFI. It is control how one sees the world. It is all consciousness. We are inundated by everything in the social media. We want our students, we want our adults to model reflection, self-awareness, and control. We will not let the world control the way we will control the world. So I wanted us all to spend a little bit of time on these 4 to revisit. Some of you are probably in the room when we actually came up with these. You must look at these every day, but I know I can say for ASB, oftentimes we don't revisit what we meant by our skills. We just assume we all know, but you don't. So at TFI, collaboration is inclusive and diverse. Creativity is positive change. Communication is articulate, active advocacy. And consciousness is reflective self-awareness, and we will control the way we see the world. Here are the 8 that you all should be very familiar with. We've taken these 4. And with that, I think the next slide, I am going to turn this over to Mario. So I will mute my microphone. So Alex and I are going to be muted. Mario is going to lead through some slides. Every once in a while, Alex and I will jump in as we go through the next few slides. Go ahead, Mario.
Thank you, Craig. That was a great start to the session. Hi, everyone. I'm Mario Fishery, the Director of Technology Support at the American School of Bombay. I look over the complete IT services and infrastructure at ASB that includes AV, IT cloud services, network and data security. For this particular session, I'm going to start with 2 questions, and I need you to type in your answers in chat. The first question that we get asked a lot, that's me, Alex, and Craig when we are going for presentations is, will technology replace the teacher in the classroom? You've got 30 seconds to type in your answers in chat. And I'm getting a big no. I'm going to throw out a couple of words here. There's artificial intelligence, Google AI. Oh, and it's coming. No. Craig, can you see this? Can you see the chat? And I agree with you guys. That yes, there's not going to be a possibility ever where technology is going to replace the teacher, but the role of the teacher is going to change for sure. And that's going to be, the teacher is going to be the facilitator in the classroom and make use of technology tools. The second question, all right, the second question here. You guys can stop talking no right now. So the second question is, can you imagine the world today without the internet? Or has the internet saved the world today?
I think you got more no's for that one, actually, Mario.
Okay. Thanks for looking at that.
People can't imagine the world without internet at the moment.
Yeah, and there are certain people that need to be thanked for. That's the internet service providers, which we keep forgetting about. That's the Reliance, the Tata companies that is currently keeping our mobile networks, our internet service providers all connected. So we can even have this conversation, we can even discuss and we can share ideas. So these are two big parts. One is technology is never going to replace the teacher in the classroom. So let's clear that out. We can use this particular forum to say, yes, we have decided that technology will never replace the teacher. And yes, the internet is being a huge source. Now, I know that the internet is not available everywhere, but yes, there are countries that are using the radio as well as television channels to distribute learning to different parts of the world, which is available across every place. Coming back now to what I was going to discuss about is more towards a framework for considering digital tools. We look at low cost in order for us to give a good platform to our teachers, and also keeping budget constraints in mind where we are helping out local schools. We look at low cost items, and we look at bulk purchases as well as free items. Now, let me talk about something that is called as free. There is absolutely nothing in this world that comes for free. There's always some kind of a trade-off. And this is where the data security part of it needs to kind of kick in whenever you're looking or you're selecting tools for your organization. At ASB, we do a complete 360 of a service provider before we get into an agreement. There is something called as terms and conditions, which you should need to be aware of and which you need to read before getting into any agreement or getting into any application that is absolutely free. At ASB, we've been for almost now 12 years using the bring your own device model, where each and every student has got their own laptops. So it has been very easy and very smooth for us to transition over to a virtual learning platform, because most of our applications, actually all of our applications, are cloud-based, and we were able to easily transition to a virtual platform. We are also device agnostic. So whenever Alex and his team look out for any particular software or any applications that need to be used in our learning environment or our ecosystem, it is checked to make sure that it is mobile friendly, that it is platform agnostic, that it can be used on a Microsoft device, on an iOS device, and plain simple browser. Because today it does not depend on which device you have, but it is more that if an application is available on a browser, then yes, it can be accessed across anywhere in the world. We also look at applications that can be used on an offline basis. So if the internet is not available, then the content, when downloaded, is also accessible to that particular user. We always keep in our minds the teachers and the students and the ease of use. Ease of use will be followed by the data security. So if an application is really easy to use, that is when we propose it to our teacher and as to our parent community as well. And all the applications, or everything that we do at ASB is aligned with what Craig can speak about a little bit more about, is our strategic plan, our vision. This is possible if you have a very strong leadership team, if you have a strong board that kind of supports you, and you have teachers that work in groups to make and uplift a particular organization. And I think so you all have that in Teach for India as well. But this entire alignment is required to kind of support 21st century skills. Alex, next.
I want to just jump in real quick, Mario. I'm looking at the chat. I see that some people are questioning, and there have been some questions about availability and access to resources. So when we were putting together the list of digital tools that we will be sharing with everyone today, we were definitely keeping in mind access to resources. And that is why for many of them, like you heard Mario say, we are looking at what can run on a mobile device. I think with the adoption of Geo and the widespread utilization and access of 3G now, and the fact that almost every single family, at least, maybe not individual, but almost every single family has access to some sort of mobile phone. And therefore, having access to that in the home gives students the platform and availability to connect with many of the tools we're going to be sharing today. Granted, it's not a perfect world just yet. We don't have unlimited or 100% access, but we are moving in that direction. So we are trying to work and present ideas and tools that can be used with the vast majority of students today.
Yeah, and also to add to that, Alex, I mean, that's a great point, because yes, we have been working with the SSC schools and the CBSE schools to kind of help them out. And Craig has been on panels with even the Maharashtra government to decide on exactly what are next steps for online learning. And if, like I said earlier, is that if internet is not available, yes, you do have the media, you have television, you have radio, which can be used. I mean, these are great platforms which can be used for learning, where you could have every station cater to every different types of type of grade level. Let's move on to the next slide. The time we are right now in is a great time to kind of have partnerships with schools, with organizations. So it's good that you can approach companies today, because there are a lot of like Zoom is providing free online online classrooms for teachers, for schools. Even Google Meet has come up with opening up their platform to teachers, so they can use their platform. You can even sign up for Google EDU and get the entire platform where you can use mail, you can collaborate on documents. So a lot of companies have opened up their resources, and as Teach for India has a huge reach and a great name in the market, it'd be really good to approach people and organizations for support at this particular period of time. So we have written also to a lot of organizations who are kind of helping us out with huge discounts and even giving their platform free of cost to us, where we kind of go through their terms and agreement, and we sign off with them to kind of use it maybe for a year. And then we kind of evaluate exactly all the systems before we move forward with our learning environment. Yeah, next one. So Alex and his team and my team as well, we have put together some great resources. This is again for professional development, where we, I think so, have on every Thursday, we have a session for our teachers, and we kind of open that up to the public as well, where people can, if they're getting into right now the virtual space, into virtual learning, they can make use of these EdTech resources which are available on our channel. You can just Google ASB EdTech, and there are multiple channels that are available and playlists for different. There's for mindfulness. There's for you can see there's for remote learning tools. There's video editing tools. And we have got a great PE team also, because there are very limited resources for physical education, especially for the lower elementary and the elementary, who have put up some wonderful videos which you can use for your classrooms to teach your kids as well. So you can just get to this particular resources by going to the EdTech channel. Just go to Google and type in ASB EdTech channel, and you'll be able to see all the resources. And we have categorized it by playlists, so it becomes very easy for you to get access to information. We've also worked with the, internally, we have created a resource kit, which is called the DLP kit. That's the Distance Learning Protocol kit. And it also states all our virtual learning resources. So we have the entire virtual learning plan of ASB, as well as we have got the divisional learning plans of what we are supposed to do when we go virtual. Now, being at ASB, we always have, we have 2 days where we always practiced going virtual. So that kind of made it much more easier for us to kind of move onto a virtual platform. So tomorrow, if everything does go back to normal, it's recommended at least to have 2 or 3 days in your calendar where the school does go virtual, so you can be prepared in case there's going to be a second wave of anything bad that's going to come up. And I will now leave this over to Alex.
Yeah, I just want to share also, thank you for that, Mario. As you heard, Mario is my partner in crime, in the sense that he handles all of the IT infrastructure. He makes sure that systems run, while I can focus on working with teachers and developing a deeper pedagogical understanding of how technology can be used in the classroom. So I could not do my job without him. So I am eternally grateful to him and his team. The resource I wanted to share on this page, I've been posting links into the chat, so feel free to check out the YouTube channel. You can look at some of our PD sessions. You can share with other teachers. But this resource in particular, I think is incredibly valuable for us in this context, especially here in India, with all of the things that are popping up in the chat, asking many times about how do we get students who don't have internet access to these resources? What if they don't have the right devices? What can we do? And if you visit the UNESCO website, they have shared a distance learning solution database. And that database is specifically targeting individuals from lower income developing nations who might not have the same access as these more developed nations. So please, if you get a chance and you're looking for actionable tools to use in your classroom, go check this out. I will try to copy and paste the link in a moment. I can't do it as I'm going through the presentation. Thank you so much for that. Ashfath posted the link in there. It's wonderful. And there's a lot of things under a category which says does not require internet access, meaning you just have to connect one time. So visiting a spot, one person who has a house, maybe that has Wi-Fi, visiting that location, downloading materials, and then able to walk away and to continue the learning is very important. On that note, we are going to be moving on now to a very sort of tech-focused part of the presentation where we will be delving into a lot of different tools. Do not worry about not remembering everything that we're covering. As you heard from Craig, each of these tools merits a 45-minute session where we do the same with our teachers. We don't have the luxury of that time. So instead, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be giving you an overview. We're going to be giving you access to this presentation following the session. You will have access to the recording, so you can go through and you can follow up with everything we talk about today. For each of the digital tools, this is the way that we broke it down. So on each slide, we are going to talk a little bit about what this tool does, why you would use it, what are the sort of pedagogical practices that it can support, how does this potentially fit into your virtual classroom, and what are some key considerations and takeaways. And these considerations are things that either I'm sharing from the ed tech perspective or Mario is sharing from the technical support perspective. Mario's team runs almost 24/7 tech support for our parent community. And one of the things that we oftentimes struggle with is that parent education piece. So he gets emails and he gets contacted by parents who don't have the ability to navigate some of these tools. So he might have some insight into how you can best support parents of your students as well. So this slide here, I'm going to leave it up for a while because there's a lot of information to process. And what we've done here is we've essentially tried to present you with an overview of the tools that we are going to be diving into today. So as you can see, there are multiple columns. In the first column, you see the name of the application. You see the cost. And as you can already guess by looking at that, almost everything that we mentioned or we will be sharing today is going to be free. If it is not completely free, then that means that there's some sort of limitation, some sort of trial. Oftentimes these companies will be willing to provide you and your organization, whether it's TFI or another organization, access to their platform without paying. If you can initiate that relationship with them and you can communicate the circumstances of your organization. We also talk about whether or not it's mobile friendly. Almost everything is mobile friendly, and we really tried to fixate on that point because we understand that that is the #1 device for students in India. Access to a phone is something that vast majority will have. Whether it's a shared device is another conversation, but that is what they're going to be accessing information on. We need to be listening to that. Whether or not it requires internet, unfortunately, most of these things will require at least some internet connectivity. Not all the time when you're using it, but you will have to access it at some point. The age restrictions or the age recommendations that you see, those are simply an internal recommendation from what we've seen with the students that we've worked with. We understand what can a 5-year-old do on a mobile device. Are they able to use an application that we've mentioned there? If so, we've put it up as 5+. Ease of use, one smiley face means it's on the more difficult end of the spectrum, but nothing here is very difficult. We tried to also think about parent education and student education and teacher education. We don't want everyone to have to go through long trainings for this. And we also put star ratings based on how well we feel it matches up with the 4 C's that we are going to be looking at today. I have a feeling just by looking at the chat that many of these, especially the video conferencing, obviously we all know how to use Zoom because we're on Zoom right now. I see a lot of people mentioning Google Meet, which is another wonderful tool. So we will be going in a little bit more in depth for each one of these. So if you want to take a picture of this right now, feel free to do that. I'm going to be switching the slide in about 5 seconds. All right. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is simply the list that we felt applicable to share related to these 4 21st century skills today.
Alex, can I just say something here just for the tech help desk that you mentioned?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just again, for these platforms that we are all using, the technology support team is crucial for the running of an organization. Because like a captain, there's Captain Alok Parashar, who is our COO, he says it very clearly at the beginning of the year to the teachers. You are hired to teach, and we are hired not to teach, but we will support you with whatever needed to enhance the lives of our students and ASB community. So it's very important to have a centralized support structure. So teachers, if they're having any issues, can always fall back to a help desk or somebody who is there to help them out. So that's why, Alex, you brought a very important point earlier about the tech help desk, and we're running almost a 24/7 shift. But it is really crucial in any organization that we have a good support structure to enhance our kids' lives and learning.
Great. Thank you, Mario. So I'm going to hand it over for a moment before we get into this. At the beginning of each section, when we talk about the first, we talk about the 1C that we're going to be addressing. Craig will discuss a little bit more about it because I see that some people are asking for additional clarification, and then we'll jump into the tools.
So a few minutes ago in the chat, I just sort of put out a message that I don't know if all of you saw. And the message basically said the following: if you are truly committed to doing what is best and right for your kids, for your colleagues, and for the parents in your community, you have to start using the resources that are available to you. And I know the Teach for India reality of internet connectivity or in devices is in some corners of your community is almost non-existent. I get that, but that cannot be what we are teaching to. We have to be teaching to the spectrum of. And the number of free resources, as Mario said, the fact that ASB is putting all of this stuff out there, and already tens of thousands of Indian students are getting a better education because things are out there and people are accessing them. And then the UNESCO one. And as Alex said, the UNESCO is not putting resources out there for the Ivy League schools. The UNESCO is putting it out there for those tribal schools in West Africa. They know the reality, they're doing that, which brings us to our rating. One of the questions here, Alex, was that rating or was that somebody else's rating? That's our rating. So everything Alex showed you on that big slide is, these are the resources that we believe are best and most appropriate for Teach for India. They are all free. They will allow us to inherently attach, to teach to and model these 4 C's of the Teach for India 8 C's. And so again, I am pushing you to educate yourself, to leverage resources. It's our responsibility. We're going to now begin by taking a look at communication. And I just want every one of these slides when we go in, remember, what is communication for TFI? It's that articulate, active advocate.
Okay. So each of these slides for each of these tools is going to follow a very similar format. And that's just so that we are, so we take some time to be familiar with the layout so that we can find the information and process it quickly as we move through these. Up at the top, you see, again, just a snapshot from that table so that each slide, you're going to see that snapshot. You'll be able to refer back to that. We also have included the link to the website for each of these tools. We are reminding you of the primary C that we are focusing on. As you can see with Google Meet, We've rated it a 3 out of 3 on communication and collaboration. However, we feel like it is primarily a communication tool. You'll also see a brief description underneath on the left-hand side, and then the 4 different areas that we're going to be talking about. Why would you use it? What are the pedagogical practices that it can support? How does it fit into a virtual classroom? In that case, we might share an example from something that we've done in our organization or something that we've seen done. And then what are some key considerations? What are some methods or strategies that you can use to be more successful when taking advantage of this tool?
So this slide that you're looking at, this template, this did not exist before yesterday. So yet this morning, Alex and Mario created this template. This template has already made the American School of Bombay a better school. This template, everything that was on this template, we were talking about. Teachers were talking about. So Google Meet, is that like, does that talk about consciousness? Is that like mostly a communication? Well, I found it very creative. Well, not so much, it's more, Alex and Mario put it all down here. I am now charging you as teacher and teacher leaders, when you are working with your team, to plan lessons, to plan the curriculum, to figure out what you're going to be doing on a scope and sequence, to say, here is Google Meet. It will hit 4 of our C's to a different degree. It is 6 and older, and it is free. What does it do? Great for synchronous classes. You know what? Parent education program, whatever we're going to do, if we have to do it virtually, we're going to do it on Google Meet. And pedagogically, let's know that it's a discussion, it's for feedback, and it is active listening. The minute you say we're going with Google Meet, check, 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 you know creativity, discussion, active learning. So we don't want to spend a lot of time diving into this template. We want you to study this template as a team when you're preparing to use these resources to deliver lessons.
Perfect. So as you can see, I think Craig did a great job of summing that up, of what Google Meet is used for. I'm going to go to the next one here because they're very similar. Zoom as well is a powerful tool when looking at communication and being able to communicate, whether it's with students, with other team members, or attending webinars, or running parent education sessions. The main differences that are worth highlighting here is that Google Meet is significantly easier to use. However, it lacks some of the additional features that you might find yourself wanting to have. And the one that I do want to just give a shout out for that's related to Zoom, and I'm not sure if you as a user has experienced or used this, but it's the idea that you can have a breakout room. And what that means is you are able to place the participants of your Zoom meeting into smaller rooms. And then you as the teacher can move between those virtual rooms. So you are able to do all sorts of groupings based on the skill level of the students, potentially by age. If you have a multi-age classroom, you can group them differently. So I think it's important that Zoom has some of the capabilities and features that we would want to have, or we already plan on using in our traditional brick and mortar organizations and institutions. We like to have students be flexibly grouped. We like to be able to group them on the fly based on what we're doing. Zoom has that ability as well. In terms of key considerations, people have been asking questions about security. We know that everyone right now is sitting at home all over the world. We know that there are going to be people that are going to look for opportunities to get into Zoom meetings or get into Google meetings and play inappropriate videos or music, or just in generally try to Zoom bomb people. We are aware of this. And all we can do to try to ensure the safety and security of these meetings is to make sure that we meet the expectations of securing them with passwords, that we do not share the information and the passwords publicly, and that we also know enough about the platform to be able to actually kick somebody out or restrict someone from entering whenever necessary. And the one other thing that we really want to recommend is to record sessions that you have with students in order to ensure that you are keeping child safeguarding in mind. So that's something that we practice at ASB. Every single session that we have, especially one-on-ones, we record all of those sessions and we store them. Not just so that other students can catch up on the learning, but also that so we meet the child safeguarding standards that we set out as an organization. The next one I'm going to talk about is Adobe Spark Post. Has anybody used this one? If you have, just pop it in the chat. I'm sure there's going to be some people that have used Adobe Spark Post before. If you have not used it, highly recommend that you explore it today. It is fantastic, not only for students to create, whether it's videos or digital media or micro websites, but it also will teach you design fundamentals. It integrates incredibly well with almost any subject area or topic. So it is a tool that allows students to communicate their understanding, to advocate for a cause, to share their knowledge about a subject in the media format of their choice. And I think choice is so important as we're looking at providing personalized educational experiences for students. A small note there at the bottom of key consideration is because the app itself has a library of images that you can pull from when you are creating. All of those images are Creative Commons, meaning that they're not copyrighted images. And that in and of itself is a learning moment for students to understand that they simply don't go online and take whatever image they want and use it in their work. That is copyright infringement. And it's something that we don't explicitly teach all the time, but it is worth, again, it's a life skill, understanding that not to steal things just because they're online. I'm sure that many of us who have access to computers at home are doing screen recordings or screencastings of our sessions or lessons so we can share those online with our students. One of the recommended tools here is Loom, and that is a screen recording software that has a very easy learning curve. It's very easy to get into using it as a teacher. Highly recommend if you are sharing links to presentations, if you are doing video recordings for asynchronous learning with your children, use Loom, because what it will allow you to do is you can have your webcam, your video is displayed as you're speaking, and you will be able to navigate on your screen, explain what you're showing, and also do annotation, draw on your screen. And then what happens is when you save it, it gets saved into the cloud. And what that means is it doesn't take up storage space on your computer. Students can visit and watch the video by going to the link, and then they can engage, add comments, and add reactions and give feedback and show how well they understood the material. The one thing I will say is this is an application that does require stable, if not stable and fast internet to use. So this is more of a teaching tool, an instructional tool. If you have access to a computer, stable internet, and you want to create learning materials for your students, this is one that we have seen a lot of use at our organization. Another one here about communication. This is one that is mobile only. Anyone with a phone has access to the Android Play Store or the iOS Store can download this immediately. It is completely free. It is called Quick. And if you are looking for a way in which you can create engaging short videos to share with your students, whether it's to generate excitement, it's to share an upcoming project, or it's to celebrate their learning, take a look at Quick, because you'll find that in a matter of 2 minutes, you'll have understood how to use the software, and you are going to have a video that you can share that looks professionally made. So I've used it with students, I've used it with teachers across all different age groups, and everyone who has used it finds it incredibly engaging. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to look at the Q&A. I'm going to hand it over to Craig, and we're going to see if Elizabeth or Mario, maybe he's been keeping an eye on the questions. I think we have a lot of questions. Some of them have been upvoted quite a bit. So we'll take some questions now before we move on to the next skill that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, okay. We have just two key questions from the chat box. One is about how do we develop these 21st century skills? What are some ways of developing this?
Yeah, I think that what I said, maybe I wasn't as clear in the beginning, is there are ways that teachers can work with their students to become more conscious. There are many ways that we can work with our students to become better communicators. The purpose of today is, what are the tech resources that can be integrated into the learning experience that inherently, without any intentionality, are actually addressing these 21st century skills. So as Alex was saying, if you go to Quick, can we go back a slide, Mario? Can you just click back a slide? Okay, let's go to Quick. What Alex is saying to the teachers right now is, if you're not using a resource and you have a blank slate and you're trying to get your kids to be creative, you're trying to get your kids to have self-consciousness, if you're trying to get your kids to collaborate, you've got to think of a lot of different things, and we can work with that. What Alex is saying, if you use Quick, just by the fact that the kids are engaging with Quick, you have hit collaboration, you've hit creativity and massive communication. Without them even explicitly knowing it, they are doing these things. So I think that's the purpose of today, is to say what resources exist that can be used in the virtual world that, without even thinking about it, we are enhancing kids' 21st century skills, we are developing those skills, and then we can assess those skills.
I do think we have a couple questions in the Q&A panel. This one right here, I think, is particularly relevant about, is there an ideal, it's from Shailaja Gopinath, and it is there an ideal balance between synchronous and asynchronous classes? Some schools prefer to record classes and share them with parents via mail, and then follow up with a worksheet. No student gets to see their teacher in a direct address. Some other schools try to go live. They address students, teach them, show them some PowerPoints or videos, but basically they weave it all together for the student. What works best?
So the research on this is actually pretty conclusive. And I think maybe that's what Mario was saying earlier on. There are certain aspects of schooling and teaching that actually work better with asynchronicity. What that means is that if the lesson is prepared, if the video is prepared, if the links are there, if the download is available, then kids can go at it at their own pace. They can do it when they want to do it. They can do it as fast and as deep as they want to do it. That is the piece, I believe, as I mentioned in the beginning, that even when we go back to school, we are going to have learned how to use asynchronous virtual learning, online learning so well that we're going to say, if I only have a student from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock in my school, why am I going to take 2 hours to do this when I can just post this now online and they can do it on their own pace? And I'm not talking about homework. I'm talking about like school work that can be better done at your own pace. Now I have 2 hours during the day to do something that I would not have otherwise done. Then that's the asynchronous piece. The piece that all of the response to Mario's question about the role of a teacher, the synchronous part of learning in the virtual world is discussion. It is community building. It is interaction. It is making connections with the kid. That you cannot do asynchronously. I cannot put a video of myself and put it online and my kids and I can bond. You're not going to bond with me by watching a video of me. You're going to bond with me by doing check-ins. You're going to bond with me by all of us coming into a virtual classroom and engaging in a conversation. So classroom discussions, classroom culture building, bonding, getting to know your kids, all of that has to be in the real-time synchronous time, where from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock we're in class, we're doing very little content, we're talking more about assessment, we're talking more about skill development, we're talking more about our classroom. Then the asynchronous part is the content piece, when you're pushing that out and kids are learning it on their own. Alex, did I answer that question appropriately? So to answer that, there's not a 40-60, there's not a 50-50, there's not a 30-70. Some of our classrooms are going 6 days straight without any synchronous learning. And then we're getting into 3 complete days where it's 24/7 synchronous learning. And so it's figuring out what best meets your needs.
I would like to add to this as well, Craig, and Alex, please feel free to jump in. But we are also a very data-driven school. So having a pulse on the community as well, we get feedback from our students, our teachers, as well as from our parents, which we collect, and then we tailor make our programs specifically to their needs. So it's about knowing exactly the pulse of your community if you want to have a synchronous and an asynchronous session for your kids.
I will tell you this, that some of the parents around the world are very happy because their kids are going to a computer in the morning, they're turning on their computer, and the computer is a video of the teacher in a classroom with a marker, and they're doing all of the lessons. So for 6 hours, the kid is sitting, watching a computer, and they're getting actually the live lesson in real time. All of the research has said this is detrimentally damaging to the student. Like, this is the absolute worst thing that a child can be experiencing, is sitting, looking at a computer for 6 hours while the teacher's doing what they would have been doing anyway. So some parents are loving this because they see their kid in school sitting at the computer and the teacher is there. So they're like, this has got to be a good thing. Oh, absolutely wrong. All the research is suggesting screen time for kids beyond 2 to 2.5 hours a day is already too much. So we've got to be balancing that. Watching school in real time on a computer is not a virtual learning. It is not.
I do just want to point out again, I was answering some questions just by typing out responses. So make sure that you are actually looking at the correct tab. So it's the Q&A tab. And if you click on the Q&A tab, you'll see what questions have been answered. And I believe as a participant, you can look at those. So I have answered some of them. Some of the simple ones that were asking about specific things related to the tools, I just typed out a response. And we'll try to keep those flowing because our backlog of questions is up to 68. So we do need to keep an eye on that because there's a lot of questions that we're not going to get a time to answer if we don't follow up on those as well. All right.
I think question.
Yeah,
from
go
the
ahead.
Chat box. Just one more question from the chat box. How do we address a gap which will come because the children will not get to interact with each other as in a classroom? How do we address a gap?
Alex, let me take that one. I actually believe that at the beginning of this virtual world that we're going into, that the rich kids are going to get a better education than the poor children. I think that the more tech resources children and families have, the better that they will adapt and the faster they will learn, and that there will become a gap that's already there and become larger. That, in my opinion, is the short game. I think very quickly that the resources and the way that teachers are using it is actually, I think this is virtual learning might be the great equalizer. I think that right now, Teach for India kids are having to walk all the way to school. They're having to take a train. They're having to take a rickshaw. They're having to walk. Then they're getting into a space and there's 120 of them and they got one teacher. And you have the affluent kids that are getting into their drivers or driving them to school and they're coming in and there's 7 of them and one teacher. This is the great equalizer. Virtual learning, like I said, it's one-on-one with either a telephone, an iPhone, a computer. It doesn't matter how awesome your computer is, you still have the same access. I think that what Mario was talking about is if it's 4G, 3G, all of these people, it's going to be the great leveler. And I think 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to see the results of that, where we are going to see from low-income communities are going to be the great educated, most well-educated kids that are emerging, and I'm very excited about that. But for the short run, I think right now I know that there are organizations looking for high-speed computers at $25. I mean, that's where now innovation has been pushed, is that if this is the new normal, let's take our innovative technologies, and I know that the Gates Foundation and other foundations are beginning to think about, forget the $100 computer. What is the best $20 computer that we can get and scale up to all of the low-income families around the world so they can have the same access to the same that the kids who are in Harvard have? Okay, let's move on.
You're on mute, Craig.
Yeah, I was just saying it's a good thing to be running behind, but we're running way behind. So I don't know. What is our hard stop on this, Elizabeth? What's our hard stop?
4:30 is our ending, and 3 to 4:30 was the planned time.
So maybe my recommendation to Alex is, as we're going through these, just start moving quicker through the ones that are self-explanatory and spending more time on the ones that might need a deep dive.
Yep. What I've actually seen is a lot of people are looking for specific answers to certain questions in the chat. So I'm going to focus on those. And remember, we're not missing anything. Everything will be shared with you. You'll have access to all of this. So don't feel like you're missing out on a specific tool. You did not understand something. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move through some of the ones that I think are most important for our current context. Seesaw is an e-portfolio platform. It is perhaps one of the most versatile, one of the most powerful, one of the most interesting tools that we've rolled out at our organization. And it is one that is something that I believe, given the access to it, anyone can begin using, and it builds that reflection. It allows students to demonstrate their pride in work that they've chosen. It allows them to also go back, revisit things that they had completed before. So instead of carrying around a big binder or folder of things that they created in school, allowing them to have a digital portfolio that they can take with them. And I'm going to move through these quickly. Edpuzzle, some of you were asking about how do we get students to view videos of us teaching or videos that we've shared with them and actually assess whether or not they've actually seen it and whether or not they understand what is shown in the video. Edpuzzle does exactly that. You can pull videos from Khan Academy, from YouTube, videos that other people have made, and you can put questions at specific timestamps throughout the video. And as the students watch, and you can watch on a mobile device, as you watch, the question will pop up and you will be asked to answer the question. So this is one that you can combine with your recordings of yourself, or you simply use the millions of videos that are out there on different subjects. And you pair that with questions of your choosing to verify whether or not students understand concepts. Flipgrid, I saw some people talking about how they've used Flipgrid before. Again, this goes back to some of the students. Some people are asking about the introverts. How do we engage the introverts? You would be surprised. Nowadays, this current generation of students, many of them love being in front of the camera. They love taking selfies. They love doing video recordings of themselves. Using Flipgrid, you can post a video prompt, and students love seeing videos of their teachers. And then they respond to that prompt with their own video. Not only is it great for your classroom, but if you're looking to connect with other classrooms around the world, there is the functionality on the Flipgrid website where you can be paired up with other classrooms. Worldreader, this is pretty much a given for us because in our mind, reading and the ability to access written information unlocks so much knowledge, and it's about developing a love for reading. So Worldreader is, thousands of resources, literary resources that can be downloaded for offline reading, completely free. All of these platforms are free. Some of them are limited by trials, but the trial limitation is usually not time bound. We'll move through this again because we want to save some time at the end to get the wrap up. Craig will wrap us up. Creativity. This one here, if any of you are trying to do, service learning or work with your students to develop their, longer term projects, and you're interested in teaching app development, this is an application that will allow you to create mobile applications that do not require any coding knowledge. It is all conceptual. It is all based on spreadsheets. And I've had students create applications for different NGOs. So they identified what the problem is, right? They're thinking about the problem. They're identifying potential solutions, and they're creating mobile applications that can be used on mobile phones within minutes. So you remove the complexity of the coding and focus on the learning of solving a problem.
I just want to interject and go back to my comment I keep hammering on. Imagine two Teach for India classrooms. The two teachers are in this webinar right now. Their children have the same resources. One of those teachers takes this PowerPoint when we're done with it and goes through and says, how can these 20 different applications be used by me and be used by my students to enhance their learning and in the process really hit on these 21st century skills? And they do it. And the other class goes about doing things the way they did it before these resources really presented to them. 1 year later, take a look at the impact on student learning. I want everyone in Teach for India's community to hold yourselves accountable for this. We are not spending an hour on Glide. We are giving Glide to you and saying, this is our recommendation. Alex, by the way, is probably one of the most well-informed tech integrators on the planet right now. He is. He literally is a computer engineer that has come to education, and his passion is, how do I integrate technology into education? He's chosen 20. The man has presented over 400 to our faculty. He's chosen 20 with Teach for India in mind. So again, I'm pushing you to hold yourself and your teams accountable to how are we going to enhance our learning engagements for our students with technology when we have to. If we were making these presentations to you and you were back in your old schools and you decide not to use any of it, no problem. But now we do not have that luxury. We are in a virtual world. So until we get these $20 computers, we have to figure out how we can get our kids to use their phones or their parents' phones. We've got to do this. This is our job, to make education accessible. And since we're in the virtual world, let's do it with the technologies available to us. Push. I'm going to keep nudging you on that.
Some of you asked about parlay ideas. You asked why it received such a high rating. And the reason is that it's very difficult to simulate natural classroom discussions in a virtual setting. And if you go to Parlay Ideas, you'll see that they have discussion topics. Many of them are now related to this current situation. So if you're trying to get your students to be thinking about what this situation means for them, what this situation means for the future of our planet, for the future of our country and society, you can use a tool like Parlay Ideas. And it will not only allow you to have an online portal for discussion, but it will give you analytics and data telling you which students are engaging, which students are not engaging, what gender is engaging more, is there a disparity and a gap between those two? And you can then dig a little bit deeper and reach all of your students and encourage them to have this sort of discussion. I'm going to keep moving. CoSpaces, one of my favorites as well. If you're looking to teach computational thinking, design thinking, if you do anything with digital storytelling, CoSpaces allows you to do all of that using simple block-based programming. Or if you are more advanced or your students are more advanced, they can actually do scripting code as well. So it is something that I've used extensively with students all the way up from, so if you use Scratch, you will find that CoSpaces is exactly the same, except it is 3D instead of 2D. So your students would absolutely love it. SDG Academy, I think this is the last one. Yeah, the last one I wanted to share, and this one is very particular right now as we are thinking, and many schools are thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and how do we get students to not only understand what they are, but to be excited about trying to solve these problems, about coming up with innovative solutions for the challenges that our future as a race and species face. So therefore, I would encourage everyone to visit that website, sdgacademy.org. Take a look at they have online courses run for free by professors from all over the world. They also have videos organized by category. Take advantage of virtual learning right now and involve your students in a project. Say that for the next 1 month, we are going to look at this sustainable development goal, and we are going to be trying to come up with solutions that we can do or create to solve this problem in our local community. That, I guarantee you, will not only get your students excited about learning, but will actually have them create something that could make the world a better place. On that note, we have 5 minutes remaining. Forgive me for going through that very quickly. All of it will be shared. I'm going to hand it off to Craig to wrap it up.
Thank you, Alex. I'm always so blown away by the colleagues I work with every day. And Mario and Alex put all this together. What I would like to, we're actually going to skip the collaboration ones because we want to get you out at 4:30. But as Alex is going through those, I want to say one more time. Alex, just go to the next slide, Alex. Yeah, let's go to the next one. No, keep going. Oh, we didn't have the last, okay. Yeah, that one there, I think. So I want to end by looking at these tunnels again. And I don't think that's the slide, there we are. I want to end here. and I want to end on time because it's 4:25. The biggest takeaway that I hope everybody leaves with is that Craig and Mario and Alex were charged by Teach for India to work with you on the development of 21st century skills in the virtual learning space. We decided, based on our 2 months of experience with virtual school at the American School of Bombay, that rather than work with teachers and teach them how to teach 21st century skills in the virtual space, let's give them applications that inherently do it by themselves. It happens. If you use this skill, you are developing a communication skill. If you use this app, you are forced to be creative. If you use this app, it will enhance your consciousness and self-awareness. That's why we've chosen the 20 that we are presenting today. Number one, so my big takeaway for number one is these apps inherently do the job of building 21st century skills, and especially 4 of the C's on TFI. Number two, the resources we shared are free. The resources, Alex showed you that the UN Sustainable Goal app, these are lessons prepared by professors and teachers from the best schools in the world for free. They're teaching the math. They're teaching the social studies. They're actually teaching you how to read and write. The lesson is done. It's available. It's free. How can we not use it? These can be guest lecturers in your classroom every single day. Reading. Our children don't have books. Our schools don't have libraries. Nonsense. Alex shared an app with you that has access to 200,000 books age appropriate in English. So the books are there. They're on the phone. They can be reading the best books. Who needs the library? The library is here. It's in the app that has access to all of these books. Our job as the educators is to leverage, to access, leverage, and shove it down our kids' throats. Let our parents know. Let your parent know that is in the low-income housing with only an Android phone that they can be reading to their child a different book 3 times a day. Their kid can be reading by themselves. So number one, the apps are going to do the virtual, the apps are going to inherently do the 21st century skills. Number two, use the resources, leverage the resources. And thirdly, I want to end with, we are in this COVID tunnel. And you, the Teach for India adult community, you are the ones that have the responsibility and the ability to bring us into the light faster. That is it. And I want to end with the following quote. Is it the next click? There it is. By Phil Wohl. Reinvention is the purest form of hope. And if our hope is to educate our children and meet their needs as best we can during this time of coronavirus, then we must reinvent ourselves. If we do not reinvent ourselves, we are not hopeful. If we do not reinvent ourselves, I believe we have not done what we have been charged to do with the children that we serve. And with that, it is 4:29. So on behalf of Mario, on behalf of Alex and myself and the American School of Bombay, I want to thank you for the time that you have given us to support you and to be partner with you. We are here anytime you want. Thank you.
We would like to thank all of you guys, Craig, Mario, Alex, and the entire ASB team for such a wonderful webinar. It has been just exciting, very exciting to listen to all of you. There's lots of learning and lots of tools we have never even heard about. Thank you so much. I'm very sure that all of this will be useful for all our teachers. Can you please quickly share your thoughts on this webinar? What do you think about this webinar? How was it?
Are you asking me or the...
Yes, you, Craig. Yeah, Craig, Alex, or Mario, like how was it?
Oh, it was wonderful. In fact, I'm leaving here already with 3 of the apps that I want to start practicing, because I had not really paid attention to them earlier. And every time I work with Mario and Alex, I always just am so inspired. And I always end up thinking to myself, why am I making all of this work hard for me when there are apps that can do this so much better and easier? I'm the Buddha. I'm the Buddha going, why am I not asking these people, how can I do this better for my students? So it's been a pleasure, as always. Teach for India inspires us deeply, and it's our joy and privilege to work with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For all our users here, our next webinar is scheduled to take place on May 22nd with the team WikiHow on teaching everyone the how-to of everything. So please do look out for Firki emails in your inbox for information on this upcoming webinar. Before you leave, please take a minute to give us feedback on your learning experience on a webinar today. This helps us grow and improve our resources for you. So we have pasted the link on the chat box. Please give feedback for us. Also, to reach out to our speakers after the webinar, please write to edtech@asbindia.org. We pasted the link on the chat box. You can also follow the American School of Bombay on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. The links will also be pasted on the chat box. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Namaskar, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you for having us.